I never thought my life would unravel the way it did. My name is Emily Parker, and for most of my 58 years, I believed in family above all else. Family was supposed to be the safe place, the circle that never breaks, the people who would stand by you even when the world turned its back. I built my entire identity around that belief. But what I didn't realize was that sometimes the people you love the most can be the very ones who drive the sharpest knife into your back. I wasn't born into luxury. My parents were hardworking, modest people who taught me the value of honesty, loyalty, and sacrifice. From a young age, I believed if you gave love freely, you would receive it back. That's what pushed me into adulthood with hope and determination. I got married in my 20s, had children, and for decades I poured my entire being into building a home for them. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked 2 jobs when times got hard. Every dream I had was tied to giving my kids a better life. But here's the thing about sacrifice. It's invisible until someone chooses to notice it. And my family? They rarely did. To them, I wasn't Emily, the woman with passions, dreams, and struggles. I was just Mom. I was the plate that carried everything, the one who held the house together. And like a paper plate at a family cookout, I was used, bent, and expected to hold weight until I broke. I didn't see it coming at first. Little signs slipped through the cracks, moments where I'd be excluded from conversations, decisions, or even celebrations. Birthdays I wasn't invited to plan. Family trips where I found out after the tickets were already booked. But I brushed it off because mothers do that, don't they? We excuse. We forgive. We tell ourselves, they don't mean it. They're busy. They'll realize one day how much I matter. But the moment that shattered me wasn't subtle. It wasn't quiet. It was loud, humiliating, and unforgettable. A single afternoon that told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in my family's eyes. It started with a family gathering at my daughter Michaela's new lake house. She'd just bought it with the inheritance money her father left behind. Money I never touched because I wanted my children to have a better start than I did. Michaela had always been ambitious, determined to climb her way into the kind of life I could never provide. I was proud of her, truly. But pride turned to bitterness the moment I realized the inheritance I had sacrificed to leave untouched had become the wall that separated me from her. That day, I arrived with a simple paper plate of homemade cookies. I didn't have much to give, but baking was my way of showing love. As I walked in, the chatter in the kitchen stopped for a moment. Eyes turned to me, scanning me like I didn't belong. Then, almost as quickly, they turned away. My own daughter barely looked up from her wine glass, as if my presence was more of an interruption than a welcome. And then came the words. Words that cut deeper than any blade could. Michaela's husband laughed and muttered something about paper plates being tacky for a celebration like this. Michaela smirked, not even defending me, and added, "Well, Mom's always been simple." It was meant to be a joke, but in that moment, it felt like my entire existence had been summed up in one word. Simple. Disposable. Forgettable. Like the cookies I brought were nothing compared to the catered spread on the marble countertop, and like I was nothing compared to the life they had built without me. I smiled through it. I laughed faintly, as if I hadn't heard the venom behind the words. That's what I had always done, swallow the pain so my children wouldn't see me bleed. But inside, something cracked. And once a crack appears, it doesn't just stay still. It spreads. What my family didn't realize was that this was the beginning of the end. That afternoon at the lake house, with a paper plate in my trembling hands and tears burning the corners of my eyes, I silently vowed that things would never be the same again. I tried to keep my composure that afternoon, but the truth is, I felt like an intruder in my own daughter's home. Everywhere I looked, there were signs of a life I had never been a part of. Expensive paintings hung on the walls, designer furniture gleamed under soft lighting, and conversations buzzed around topics I couldn't contribute to: vacations to Europe, business ventures, investments. I stood there, holding my paper plate of cookies, like a child waiting for permission to sit at the grown-ups' table. My daughter's friends and in-laws drifted past me, offering half-hearted smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Not one of them asked about me, my life, or even thank me for coming. I found myself a quiet spot near the back patio, away from the laughter echoing through the house. From that corner, I watched my family, the very people I had raised, acting as though I didn't exist. And that's when it happened. Michaela walked into the kitchen, her voice carrying loudly enough for everyone to hear. I told Mom not to bring anything. But of course, she shows up with cookies on a paper plate. Classic. Her words stung, but what broke me was the laughter that followed. My grandchildren, who I had babysat countless times, giggled along with the adults. My son-in-law shook his head with a grin, as though I were some silly, embarrassing relic of the past. And Michaela? She looked proud, as if putting me down elevated her in their eyes. Do you know what it feels like to stand in a room full of people you love and realize you're nothing but a joke to them? It's like drowning in plain sight. You're gasping for air, but no one notices because they're too busy laughing at the bubbles escaping your lips. I wanted to leave right then and there. But something inside me, some desperate, stubborn part, told me to stay. I needed to see just how far they would go. And what I saw confirmed everything I had been too afraid to admit for years. 3 hours. That's how long they left me alone that day. 3 hours where no one spoke to me, no one checked if I was okay, no one cared that I had quietly slipped out to sit on the porch while they enjoyed a feast inside. I sat on a cold wooden chair, staring out at the shimmering lake, listening to the muffled sound of my own family laughing without me. I thought about the nights I went hungry so my children could eat, the winters where I wore the same coat year after year, because buying new ones for my kids mattered more. The dreams I gave up, the nursing degree I never finished, the trips I never took, the hobbies I abandoned because there was always someone else's need that came before mine. And for what? So my daughter could mock me in front of her friends? So my family could treat me like an afterthought? The longer I sat there, the heavier the realization became. I wasn't part of their family anymore. Not really. I was just convenient. Someone they could ignore until they needed something. A babysitter. A holiday cook. A silent spectator to their shining lives. But that day, something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even confront them. I just sat there, letting the anger crystallize into something sharp, something unbreakable. I had spent my entire life giving and forgiving. That part of me died on that porch. When Michaela finally came outside, it wasn't a check on me. She wanted to show her friends the view of the lake. She glanced at me, sitting silently in a corner, and said with a shrug, "Oh, don't mind her. That's just my mom. She likes to sit alone." Her words were the final nail in the coffin. That's when I knew I was invisible to them by choice, not by accident. And invisibility, my dear, can be a weapon. Because the moment they stopped seeing me as someone who mattered was the moment I realized I could walk away forever. And not just walk away, I could do it in a way that they would never, ever forget. That night, when I finally got back home, I didn't collapse into tears the way you might expect. No. Instead, I sat in my quiet living room, staring at the walls filled with family photos, birthdays, graduations, weddings. Pictures that told the story of a mother who gave everything. And yet, not a single photo captured the loneliness I felt inside those moments. I studied Michaela's wedding portrait, the way her smile beamed, her husband's arm around her, my hand resting proudly on her shoulder. I remembered how I had worked overtime shifts just to help pay for that dress. How I sold my grandmother's antique ring to cover the catering deposit when Michaela and her husband hit a financial snag. And yet, at the lake house, I was nothing more than an embarrassment with cookies on a paper plate. The betrayal didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for years, but I was too blind, or maybe too hopeful, to see it. Flashbacks played in my mind like a cruel slideshow. Michaela at 16, slamming her bedroom door, screaming that she hated me because I couldn't afford the latest phone. My son, Daniel, asking me for money as an adult, promising he'd pay it back but never doing so. Holidays where I cooked from dawn until dusk, only to watch my children rush off to their in-laws' houses, barely tasting the meal I had prepared. And every time I told myself it was normal. That's what mothers do. They give and give and give until there's nothing left. But that night, as I sat in my dimly lit living room, I realized something with chilling clarity. They didn't see me as a mother anymore. They saw me as a resource, a bank, a babysitter, a background character in their perfect lives. And if I didn't matter to them, why should they matter to me? That's when the plan started forming. Slowly at first, like a seed of rebellion taking root. What if I just stopped? Stopped being available. Stopped giving. Stopped sacrificing. What would happen if I simply disappeared from their lives? At first, the thought terrified me. Who was I without them? I had spent decades defining myself as a mother, as the person who held the family together. But then, I remembered that moment at the lake house. The laughter, the looks, Michaela's dismissive words. That wasn't family. Not anymore. And so I made a choice. A quiet, deliberate choice. I would walk away. But not in some dramatic explosion. Not with screaming or ultimatums. No. I would walk away in silence. Because silence, my dear, is louder than any argument. Silence would force them to face the absence of everything they had taken for granted. The first step was simple. I stopped answering the phone every time they called. Not completely, just enough for them to feel a shift. When Michaela texted asking if I could watch the kids for the weekend, I told her I had plans. That stunned silence on the other end of the line? I savored it. Next came the holidays. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't host Thanksgiving. I didn't cook. I didn't decorate. I didn't invite anyone over. I spent the day with a book, a warm blanket, and a meal I cooked just for myself. And you know what? It was peaceful. The world didn't end. Then came Christmas. Instead of breaking my back shopping, wrapping, and cooking, I sent simple cards. No gifts. Just my name, signed neatly at the bottom. It wasn't about being cruel, it was about reclaiming myself. But here's the thing about walking away. If you want it to sting, you have to make sure they feel the weight of what they lost. So, I didn't just vanish. I pulled back piece by piece, letting them notice the empty spaces where I used to be. And oh, they noticed. The calls became more frequent. The tone shifted from demanding to confused to downright desperate. Mom, are you okay? Mom, we miss you. Mom, why don't you come over anymore? But by then it was too late. The bridge had burned. Because walking away wasn't just about teaching them a lesson. It was about teaching myself one. That I deserved more than crumbs of respect. That love shouldn't feel like humiliation. That my worth wasn't tied to how much I could give before collapsing. I wasn't their safety net anymore. I wasn't their punching bag. I wasn't invisible. I was free. And that freedom? That was my revenge. The first few weeks after I pulled away, my family didn't seem to notice much. Or maybe they assumed it was temporary, that I'd caved the way I always did. But as the months rolled by, the cracks began to show. Michaela called one Saturday morning, her voice sharp. Mom, where are you? I've been trying to reach you all week. The kids have soccer, and we really need you to drive them since we're both busy. I could hear the expectation dripping from her words, like she wasn't asking but assigning. I took a slow breath and answered evenly. I can't today, Michaela. I have plans. Dead silence. Then a huff. Plans? What plans could you possibly have? For the first time, I didn't justify myself. I didn't explain. I simply repeated, I have plans. And then I ended the call. The shift had begun. By Thanksgiving, the family group chat was in chaos. Daniel sent frantic messages about how he didn't know how to cook a turkey. Michaela complained that the kids were upset there wouldn't be grandma's pies, and my son-in-law snidely remarked that I was being dramatic. I ignored it all. Instead, I spent that Thanksgiving at a little diner downtown. The waitress, a kind young woman with tired eyes, smiled when I told her it was just me. She slipped me an extra slice of pumpkin pie on the house. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Meanwhile, my absence at family events became the elephant in every room. Relatives began asking Michaela where I was, why I wasn't around. From what I heard through the grapevine, she brushed it off with excuses. Oh, Mom's just busy. Or, she's not feeling well. but people noticed. And whispers started. The breaking point came at Christmas. They had planned a big celebration at the lake house again, complete with lights, music, and catered food. Michaela called me 2 days before. Her tone was softer this time, almost pleading. "Mom, the kids really want you there. They miss you. We all do." I let her words hang in the air before replying quietly. "Do you miss me, Michaela? Or, do you miss what I do for you?" She stammered, caught off guard. "That's not fair. You're their grandmother. You're supposed to be here." I almost laughed. Supposed to be? No, Michaela. I was never supposed to be your servant. I was supposed to be your mother. There's a difference. She grew angry, her voice sharp. "So, what? You're just going to abandon us? After everything we've done together?" That's when my years of silence broke, not with rage, but with truth. "No, Michaela. You abandoned me a long time ago. You abandoned me when you laughed at me in your kitchen. You abandoned me when you made me invisible in front of your children. I've given my whole life to this family, and you couldn't give me a seat at your table. So don't you dare talk to me about abandonment." The silence on the other end was deafening. For once, Michaela had no clever retort, no dismissive smirk. Just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Power. When Christmas Day came, I didn't go to the lake house. I stayed home. I brewed coffee, curled up by the fireplace, and read a book. Alone, but not lonely. Meanwhile, my absence was all anyone could talk about. Later, I heard that Michaela's children asked why Grandma wasn't there. That Daniel sulked the entire evening. That Michaela's husband complained about how ungrateful I was, only to be met with uncomfortable looks from relatives who were finally starting to see the truth. Because here's the thing about silence. It doesn't just punish. It reveals. It forces people to confront what they've lost, to look in the mirror and see the cracks they've been ignoring. And my family? They were crumbling without me. By New Year's, Michaela showed up at my door. No friends. No husband. Just her. Her eyes were red, her voice shaky. "Mom, please. I don't know what to do. The kids keep asking. Everyone's upset. She broke off, swallowing hard. "I need you." I looked at her, really looked at her. For years, I would have melted at those words, opened my arms, and rushed to fix everything. But not anymore. I stood tall and said calmly, "You don't need me, Michaela. You need what I gave you. My time, my love, my energy. But you never gave it back. And I won't keep pouring from an empty cup." Tears welled in her eyes. For once, she had no defense. No smirk. Just shame. And that was enough for me. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't about screaming or slamming doors. It was about walking away so quietly that the echo of my absence shook their world more than my presence ever did. And as I closed the door that night, leaving Michaela standing there in the cold, I realized something. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't what you do to others. It's what you stop allowing them to do to you. After that night, after I closed the door on Michaela's tearful face, something inside me shifted forever. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that lake house months before, cookies in hand, heart open and eager to please. No, I was someone new. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defined by being a mother, a wife, or a giver. I was simply Emily. And that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet. My phone didn't buzz as often. The family group chat slowed down. My children, perhaps out of pride or fear, gave me space. At first, the silence felt heavy, like a weight pressing on my chest. But over time, that weight transformed into freedom. I joined a local book club. I signed up for yoga classes at the community center, where I met women my age who had their own stories of sacrifice and heartbreak. We laughed together, shared coffee after class, and for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged to something that wasn't built on obligation. I began traveling, too. Small trips at first, day drives to nearby towns, exploring antique shops and farmers markets. Then bigger ones, a bus tour through the mountains, A week at the beach where I walked barefoot in the sand, the waves erasing my footprints as quickly as they appeared. With every journey, I felt lighter. Meanwhile, my family struggled. I didn't gloat. I didn't revel in their hardship. But word reached me. Michaela's perfect world started to unravel. Without me there to babysit, she and her husband had to adjust their schedules. Daniel, without my financial bailouts, faced the consequences of his poor choices. And slowly, painfully, they learned what life without me looked like. Months later, Michaela invited me to lunch. Not at her fancy lake house, not with her friends or husband around. Just the two of us at a quiet little cafe in town. She looked tired, her confident mask cracked. "Mom," she said softly, "I owe you an apology." I stayed quiet, letting her continue. "I treated you like you didn't matter, like you were just there. But when you stopped being there, I realized how much you did. I'm sorry." Truly. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. For once, I saw it, not arrogance, not entitlement, but genuine regret. Did I forgive her right then? Not completely. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process. But in that moment, I felt a door crack open. Here's the truth I learned. Revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like walking away and reclaiming your life. Sometimes it looks like showing people the cost of taking you for granted. And sometimes it looks like rebuilding yourself so beautifully that they can't ignore the glow. My family will never see me the same way again. And that's okay. Because I will never see myself the same way again either. I'm not just a mother. Not just a caretaker. Not just someone's background character. I am Emily Parker. A woman who finally remembered that she matters. And that, my dear, is the sweetest revenge of all. So if you ever find yourself invisible in the life you built for others, remember this. Sometimes the bravest, loudest thing you can do is to simply walk away.